And I think it's not only a matter of environment and social impact. I think where circularity plays a big role is also resilience, because remember, resilience lies also within a country. So if you're not depending on import and export, etc., but you're actually depending on the resources that you're having and you're keeping them in the loop, you're also creating a resilience in your own country.
On a desk somewhere in South Africa, there is a laptop gathering dust. Still working, still useful, still full of possibility. Yet somewhere else, a learner is trying to write an assignment on a parent's cell phone. A teacher is sharing one outdated computer across an entire staff room. A learner is trying to apply for university using expensive mobile data and unstable connectivity. And this is not a small gap. Globally, UNICEF reports that 1.3 billion children, around 2/3 of the world's school-age population, do not have internet access at home, limiting their access to digital learning opportunities. Even more striking, UNICEF notes that only 1 in 3 school-age children worldwide has internet access at home. In South Africa, internet use is growing fast. Data Reportal reports that 50.8 million people were using the internet in early 2025, representing 78.9% of the population. But access is not the same as equity, because a child may live in a connected country and still remain digitally excluded. UNICEF South Africa puts it plainly. The prospects and opportunities afforded to children are still largely contingent on which side of the inequality divide they are born. That divide is not just about bandwidth. It is about fairness. It is about whether a child gets to participate in the future at all. Welcome to Our Voice, Our Future, powered by Breadline Africa, where we explore the issues shaping children's lives, education, and equity across South Africa. I'm your host, Nonjabulo Mtwa, and today we're joined by someone working at the center of this important intersection between sustainability and access. Karin Boomsma is a circular economy strategist and sustainability advocate working at the intersection of technology, social impact, and systems change. Through her work with DigiCircle4All and TheRockGroup, she helps organizations rethink what happens to decommissioned IT equipment, transforming unused corporate devices into opportunities for education, skills development, and community empowerment.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
I'm good. It's nice to meet you live in person. That's really good.
Yes, it's a pleasure. I actually am curious, like, what do you do at Digital Circle for All?
Yeah, for us, it's a project. So the Rock Group collaborates with Close the Gap and with RISA, which is a community impact group. And then we have the Digi server. And so we work all together in trying to receive devices that are definitely having another life in them and refurbish them, and then also teach people about circularity. So in your business place, teach entrepreneurs about digital skills and circularity, and then provide digital skills to the communities, and also ensure that the refurbished devices, they come to a place where you need them the most. So, for example, schools, TVETs, other institutions that are not having actually really great access to that at the moment. And then we should not forget that if there's no second life in them, or we can't refurbish, we need to have collection points so that e-waste doesn't go floating around or ends up on the landfill. So we're also setting up collection points, and from there ensuring that it goes to a proper accredited recycler. And we do have those in South Africa, so that's good. And then we close the loop. That's what we do.
Mm, Very interesting. Before we talk about the systems and processes, help us picture the problem. Um, when you walk into the schools and communities where digital access is limited, what does that reality really actually look like for the children and the teachers?
So when you walk in to schools and community centers and other institutions, you won't find actually many devices. There might be, if a community is well organized and they have a community center, you might find one computer where you can prepare a CV, where you're being helped to do some homework. But the access to not only the device but also access to internet. Um, and you also need electricity, it's quite limited. So you won't find that people are actually getting the skills that you are expected to have when you get out of school. Everyone is nowadays expected to know how to work with a computer, how to work with basic Word documents and Excels, etc. So it's limited, and therefore also your chances of leaving school and then having job opportunities also become smaller.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And as you work with the children and the communities, like you mentioned, what are some of the challenges that you commonly see?
Yeah, for so what we do is we work as a collective, so as a consortium, because the Rock Group does not only do this project, we also do other work within circular economy mainly, or sustainability and strategies, and education. So when we look at the community, we work with RISA because they work with established community hubs. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are going to work with people that work already in the community. So we are not newbies there. There's already an established organization, and we ensure that they have access to the devices and they can grow their center, grow their services that they provide, whether it's about homework or teaching them any type of skill. You can even make a CV, but also you want to become a barista, and then you need to have access to a coffee machine, and you then make your CV, and then you send your CV out and have access to the internet. So we're looking at like how a system already works and where points are that we can strengthen, because there's no point of coming with completely something new while there are already things in place. So we always look at what we can build on to.
Is this more than just a technology problem? Like, what long term opportunities do you see with this type of support that you're providing in the communities?
I think, and it's not only about the communities. Yes, it's a very big story actually, but we can try and break it down and keep it very simple. Because circularity, we have to imagine that first and foremost, we have a big digital divide. We have a big gap, and anyone and everyone who's nowadays working and being online, etc., it's a given. Like, you have to be online, you have to be able to use a device. Um, so yes, it will very much limit the opportunities if you haven't been able to access devices while you're actually learning, or while you're developing yourself, or going to places to be taught some skills. But the problem of a digital divide, and also circularity and looking at resources, is a much bigger problem. So then we're looking at a circularity. And at the moment, we have a linear economy. So we take resources, we make something out of it, we sell it for a good price, and then hopefully breaks down very quickly, and then we can start the cycle again. But this is also if you have the money to buy those products or to buy the services. So we also have to have a look at the design from design perspective, because that's actually the start. We don't need to only deal with waste. We actually need to ensure that from the start, where design starts, that we look at how it's being designed. And we see that luckily the government comes into play nowadays and comes with regulations and laws that are changing how you are able to make a design work. So while electronics are designed to not last, you can't replace the battery, you can't really actually easily refurbish a phone. It's now you have to be compliant to new rules. At least in Europe, they have implemented them now. That you can you can actually replace a battery. You can actually replace components, because if you have a phone or you have a computer and something doesn't work anymore, for example, your battery, it's you don't need a whole new phone. You actually do need only a battery. So we do need to really look at those design from the start, because then we make resources last much longer, and we make them also much more suitable to expand their lifespan in the process, because now we can start repairing, we can start refurbishing, and then ultimately recycle the materials. So it's not only an educational and opportunity gap; it's also a resource problem, and it's also definitely we're dealing with very bad design, and that's on purpose.
Very interesting. So, in simple terms, for people who have never been introduced to circular economy, what would you say? Um, what does circular economy mean?
Yeah. So if you go back in time, there were a lot of things there were not, but a lot of it was circular. So what circularity in simple terms means is the cycle of life. Yeah, so you used to grow vegetables, you eat them, there's actually zero waste. Or you in my time we even had like milk in a glass bottle, and it would be picked up from your house. They clean the bottle and you would get a new bottle with milk. So basically it means that you use resources and they become inputs for a next round. So anything you take becomes something, but it never goes to waste. So in a circular economy, nothing is waste. And what we're currently seeing is that a lot of things are being called waste, but they're still materials. It's waste to you because your computer doesn't function for you anymore. But the materials are there. The plastic is there, the metal is there, the glass is there, the wires are there, everything is there. So, what we like to see is that you look at everything as a material that you purposeful have transformed into something. But if that purpose comes to an end, the material should not go to waste. And that needs to be coming influx for the next cycle. So it's basically a cycle. Like in nature, nothing goes to waste, because if the leaves fall, it becomes food for the next round of the season and grows new food for uh, when the spring is coming and summer is there.
Yeah. In your opinion, w- what do like where do you see businesses misunderstanding the circular economy opportunity?
I think a lot of people do look at circularity as solving waste. But and that's true, because we have legacy waste. We have created loads of waste that we now need to deal with. But I think the opportunity lies into being much more efficient with resources and making sure that those resources are useful for a lot more people than they are now, and that they do not cause harm, but that they actually are being a really valuable input for the next round. So businesses can create opportunities, expand life of products, and create jobs in that process as well, which is very important, especially in a South African economy.
Let's talk about laptops sitting in an corporate office unused. In the circular economy terms, like how are they different basically from them like donating old unused um computers? Like how is the circular economy different from it being potentially being Like, how is it different from simply donating old devices?
Okay, you mean either you keep them and you don't do anything with it, or you donate them.
Yeah. So with circular economy, how is it different?
So in principle, it's not per se different, because if you don't use it anymore, you can give it to someone else. You're expanding a lifespan. Nothing. It's not waste. So donating is also not, in principle, waste. The problem comes in if we donate things that are actually not. You can't use them, because then they're also waste to someone else. So what you need to ensure, if your computer is perfectly fine and you say donate it and it works, it's fine. But what we're trying to see is, firstly, if people donate, they want their data to be wiped safely and secure. And we have the accreditation to do so, or the company we work with, which is also an NGO. So that's Close the Gap. They have the accreditation. It's an ISO standard. So then, as an organization, you are trusting. That's why a lot of laptops are sitting somewhere, because you don't know how to clean them out, and you don't know where they will be best of use. Because if they don't work currently, then who is going to actually make them work? So it's the wiping, and then looking at, do they need repair, or do they need to be refurbished? And refurbished means that the components that don't work that well anymore, like a battery, or sound, uh, a microphone, or whatever it is, need to be replaced. And those components are being replaced, and then they can be of much longer use for the next life.
Very interesting, because also like when I like during my undergraduate studies, I also had an elective as that was centered around environmental management, and actually like when it came to battery life, it was like batteries were actually identified as hazardous waste. So, which is why I'm actually curious. So, if you do come across like the computers that have like batteries that can't be replaced, like what do you do in that case? Do you discard those batteries? Like, how do you?
Yeah, so those batteries, it's completely true, and that's why it's quite a challenge to be responsible with electronic devices, because they are all having hazardous waste inside them, and yet they have also all very valuable components, and then you're left with the rest. So, like your battery, they definitely need to hazardous waste recycling. So you have to dispose them responsibly.
And can you share some examples of case studies where maybe you've had an influx of computers where they came all at once and you you didn't know how to handle them, like in like through the refurbishment process or replacement process? Like, how do you typically deal with that? Like,
Yeah, so for this consortium, it's not really a problem, because Close the Gap actually started in Belgium, and they also have a company in the Netherlands. And in the old days, it was what you referred to initially. It was more donations and charity, and then it would be refurbished and prepared for sending overseas, like computers for schools, in the old days. But that doesn't create jobs in Africa. It doesn't create jobs in the places of destination. And also, it doesn't guarantee that after that life, it's being taken care of responsibly. Having the hazardous waste, making sure you recycle everything you can. So, what happened then? They set up a facility in Mombasa, in Kenya. And they've also set up a facility in Nairobi. So, we're actually looking for massive influx of devices. Obviously, not all completely broken down, because we can't refurbish. So the refurbishment facilities are set up to refurbish laptops, mainly computers and laptops. And they just Close the Gap has just opened a big warehouse facility in Joburg. And in the next 2 years, we can easily refurbish 10,000 devices. So I'm not afraid of having too many. I want many, actually, because then we can make big impact, and then those warehouses are being used as well, and there are people that are well trained to refurbish there. So a lot of devices in one go is not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So one of the powerful parts of this model, the circular economy model, is that young people, uh, we are seeing, um, like the trend of more young people being trained on circular economy model, um, to refurbish, and also like in your case, to refurbish these devices. That means the solution itself creates opportunity. Can you tell us more about the layer of work? Because you mentioned that there is a bit of job creation. Can you tell us more about this layer of the work, and what kind of skills are people learning? And would you say that you mainly work with young people during the process? And how does that connect to employability and future careers?
Yeah, so there's three ways to look at what kind of skills we transfer and where the job creation is. And obviously, we need to be very honest. You don't need 1,000 people in a warehouse to refurbish, so that won't be 1,000 jobs. But we are training people to refurbish, but that would be more like 30 people doing refurbishment. Where the biggest change is and the biggest opportunity is actually making sure that entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, as you pointed out, that do have already a direction in where they want to um, be with their business. So, what kind of business doesn't really matter, but the digital skills that you need to have as a micro entrepreneur are essential actually to run your enterprise much better and to have a better chance of having good income generation from that specific business. So there's actually three types of jobs. One is in refurbishment, one is more to actually empower the micro entrepreneurs, and then the other is to train the community on digital skills, because you can have now suddenly computers in a school, but if no one knows how to use it, then it's quite useless as well. It's the same as people donating a ultrasound machine in a community to monitor babies. But if no one can read the machine, there is really no point. So it's on those three levels, and they lead to maybe more indirect jobs. I can't really trace that for a long time down the line. But if you can uplift the whole community and they have access to devices, they understand how to use it, definitely that is a big help in finding a job and having the right skills.
Okay. So for the micro entrepreneurs, so you mentioned that they get trained on this process. How do people get to know about this opportunity?
Yeah, so there will be calls for action for that, but we also work with established institutions that have already entrepreneurs and are already being trained. So they are having already a business that is working or almost working, and we can add to that curriculum to ensure that they're really empowered when they go and set up their business outside. So we also work with institutions like Taking Care of Business. They have women and youth entrepreneurs in their program on repair and remake. So they're already in the circular space. They have part of their training program is also digital, but it's not added to, um, this has not been added to their curriculum yet. So then we have, for example, access to 450 entrepreneurs that we can already empower to train.
You've mentioned that you've worked with schools that you've trained on digital literacy. How do you identify them?
Yeah, that's what Risa, our other community partner, is currently doing. They identify who and where in which community. We have identified two areas. They have already community centers. So then there is an established relationship, and you can see that digital is the missing link there. There might be support on medical advice and like a mobile doctor. There might be other vocational skills trainings taking place, sports, but not yet the part of the digital aspect. So they will identify that because they know that much better than we do.
This is where sustainability becomes deeply human. It's not only about reducing waste, but it's also about restoring access. How do you see the connection between environmental responsibility and social justice?
Wow. Yeah, that's a big question. I think everything is related. So we are nature. So if we don't have nature, we wouldn't be able to be here. So that in itself, if you pollute your environment, if you, and which we have, and with toxic waste and a lot of waste, then that affects our health, but also our well-being and how we live our lives. So it's all directly linked to each other, um, and I think it's not only a matter of environment and social impact. I think where circularity plays a big role is also resilience, because s- remember, resilience lies also within a country. So if you're not depending on import and export, etc., but you're actually depending on the resources that you're having and you're keeping them in the loop, you're also creating a resilience in your own country. And I think that's a very strong point for circularity as well. And that's directly linked to environment, because if you ship a product all over, like a t-shirt we wear, has been there's been cotton being produced, that's being shipped out, that's being processed in another country. Then that's being turned into yarn and textile in another country. It's being dyed in another country, and then it's being packaged or being made into a garment in another country, and then it's distributed to sell in a specific country. So your shirt overall traveled 6 countries. If you do that and something happens in the world, we're completely depending on having one chain broken in that whole value chain, and we have no shirt. And it's unnecessary. There's a lot of things that we do not need to create that global dependency in. And I think that's what we should look at better, because it's not all, uh, it's actually crazy that a t shirt traveling 6 countries is cheaper than making a t shirt in your own country. Yeah, so that should not be the case. And I think that's also with other products and other services. So look at the well being and a thriving community where people all have access to resources. Resources stay in the loop, and you also all have a role to play to do so. And there's where job opportunity is.
And that is the real impact. Um, in this case, like, are there any specific stories that have stayed with you, stories of resilience, like as you mentioned, of this real impact that have stayed with you in the work that you do in the communities?
Yeah, I can give you an example, because we're in the process of this project, so we have not final stories of the outcome yet here, but we do have them in East Africa. So, for example, two young guys, they were at school. They were in the first year. They were in university, but there was access to a digital space by Close the Gap in Mombasa. And they were able, in the maker's room with the digital devices, using those skills, to actually turn an idea that they had for local fishermen into a solid business by using that. So I will tell you what it was. They thought, the fishermen, they go out on the sea and then they fish for 4 hours, but it's very hot and humid. And then you fish a few fish, and then you have to let them be there, maybe in a cooler box, and then you have to come back. Because if you stay longer, your fish is off before it actually reaches the shore and you can sell it. So they thought, maybe we can have cooler boxes that are actually fridges that stay cool for a much longer time. And then only when your fridge is full, you come back to the shore. But how do we do that? So they set up a rental service for um, freezers or fridges that were solar powered, but they had a GPS. So they could also monitor and track them so they couldn't be stolen or they knew where they were. And they have developed this whole business plan with in the makerspace in their community in Mombasa to make that work. And I think um, to give access, and that is also how you actually support entrepreneurs or micro entrepreneurs. That's more than just digital skills. They had digital skills. They could create a Word document. But what they couldn't do is actually advancing their enterprise by using all these digital skills and to practice with it in a makerspace. And they have a very nice startup that's running very well for the last, I think, 4 or 5 years now. Yes.
Success story.
Yes, that's very nice.
Very interesting. Um, so many companies want to help and bridge this digital divide, but also be part of the circular economy process. But perhaps some of them they are unsure where to begin. From your perspective, what does meaningful corporate participation actually look like?
That is very simple. You have to look at what your business is doing. So your impact is the most important thing to make better, to improve on. Not something nice outside. That's nice, but it's called charity. It's not sustainability, it's not circularity. So look at your own business practice and ensure that you do not do harm. So whatever you do you leave things better than that you find it? And that process is not something you do overnight, but you can have a look at it. And where is your impact? So if you're very good in one, like if you use a lot of water, please look at that. Look at how you can actually save water or reduce water and be mindful with water and treat water if it's polluted, etc. Don't start another project on, I don't know, helping street dogs before you have actually solved your water issues. Yeah.
Um, what would you say could be internal mind shifts that also need to happen within companies to actually, be fully ahead of the sustainability game, but also fully into like build the circular economy practices into the processes? Like, what mindset shifts would you say are required in the space?
Yeah. Mindset is individual. So I think it doesn't matter why you do it, it matters that you do it. So it's very hard to influence the reason to do it. Some people will be triggered because it is good for social impact. Some people will do it because it's actually all about resource efficiency. Most businesses still look at, and otherwise they wouldn't be a business, at the bottom line. Does it influence my profit? For a circularity mindset to work, you need to think long term. So that's maybe the only universal component. Whether you do it for people, the planet, for whatever reason it is, I think one thing is you need to have a long-term plan. And the other reason can be, or more a stick than a carrot, is that you have to be compliant sooner or later. So these things like we in 2027, you can't bring organic waste to a landfill in South Africa. We do have producer responsibility organizations because we have extended producer responsibility in this country, meaning that everyone who's actually selling a computer is the one responsible recovering the computer after it's being used. So you pay levies through a producer responsibility organizations. You will see these kind of laws and regulations much more, especially when you have trade relationships with Europe. You will be forced in a lot more of the design aspects that we talked about briefly to ensure that you get it right from the start, that a product you bring on the market is, you can repair it. It's designed for durability, you can refurbish it. So if you do not have any motivation at all, then be it that in 5 years' time you have to be compliant. You won't do that overnight. It's not possible. So you better start now.
Yeah, so the mindset shift actually needs to start now.
Yeah, and it's all about having a future plan. And if you're not sustainable on environmental and social components, what are you sustainable on? That can't last forever. So it's also the future of your business.
Yeah. Because I remember when I was also an undergraduate, part of my environmental studies was also the polluter pays principle. And I think we've been speaking compliance for a very long time. And I think now it's gonna get even more stricter, especially since we're heading towards the 2030 UN Sustainable Development Goals, like trying to meet those targets and everything. So, in your view, how can leadership move forward, like from intention to action?
Yeah, enforcement helps. And that's lacking often, which makes sense because you can't enforce one on one. You don't have the labor force to enforce one on one. But enforcement needs to be stricter. And the other problem is why is there so much talking? Is because you can have a new law and regulation. But if the infrastructure is not there to instantly implement that rule, then that's hard because now the private sector needs to find ways to ensure that the infrastructure works. Like we can have EPR, but how does a PRO actually recovers the materials for the producers? How does that work? And there's ideas around it. People need to be aware. You need to be able to deposit. You need to have a waste management system in place. But it's not yet completely designed around the polluter pays principle. So I think there is where you see it sounds like talking, and I think it is because people need to find ways to make an infrastructure adjustment that works to actually enforce that law.
Yeah, and I think this is where the design that you mentioned earlier on is becomes very important. Data security is often one of the biggest reasons companies hesitate to release old devices. How do we address these concerns without allowing them to become permanent barriers? Like, how do you?
You just need to make sure that you leave those devices with organizations that are accredited to do safe data wiping, and you get a certificate for it. It's very simple. There's two standards. They have either one or the other, and you ensure that you get a certification, and that will ensure you that your data is being wiped safely.
Okay, and that process, is it part of the ISO management standards?
Yes, yes, yes. So if you will donate devices to us, we will firstly also provide like a circularity training at your office, so you get a bit more like an understanding because we use very big words for very simple things. I mean, like 70 years ago there was no plastic, so we didn't have to make everything so complex. So let's just keep it simple and ensure that you also understand. A lot of businesses do something already on circularity, but they don't know it. And then there's things that they could do, but they didn't know that those are the things that actually would be very helpful. So we do that. Provide your devices. We ensure safe data wiping. By Close the Gap, you will receive the certificate, and then we move that device into the process. If the device is not it can't be refurbished and we can't actually use it for the purposes that we have in this project, we ensure that it comes to an registered, well-known recycler that ensures safe recycling of the full device.
It's been a pleasure. I think has been a very interesting conversation, especially with the like with the different options available like around the circular economy practices that you've mentioned. For people who do not know, what would you say, like what could success look like 5 years from now, within the like practicing circular economy practices, and also like ensuring that we reduce our electronic waste and helping companies in the future?
Yeah, success to me looks like that people understand what materials are being used for what you use on a daily basis. Where's this table made of? Your computer is made of. So we have a better understanding what materials are we using for which purpose. And if I don't use that product anymore, where can I dispose it responsibly? And that there is an infrastructure for it, because I think that would be also helpful. If you teach people not to litter, but you do not have dustbins, it becomes very complex. Yeah. So I think what success looks like is I would love to donate my device, and I hope it can help someone else for a long time and has a successful business set up or chances of getting a job. But there's also waste and e-waste, or e-products that I can't use anymore, that are of no value to anyone else in the current state. But can I please also make sure that I can dispose them responsibly? So I think that's what success looks like. And to set up a system to do so, you need to incentivize, but you also need to have an infrastructure in place that can assist on that. So I think it's on different components. The awareness need to be there, but an infrastructure should facilitate that process as well. And I think people need to stop looking at materials as waste. It's waste to you at this given time, but it's not, the material is still that material. So let's see if we can create different opportunities with the same resource.
Yeah, so almost as if we need to be intentional.
Mm.
How about how do we, like influence the ecosystem and ensure that we have that positive impact and have a better future for our children? Thank you. It was a pleasure
Thank you very much for having
interviewing
me.
you, yes, and you sharing some insights on the work that you do at Digi4Circle. A device on a desk,
a
a child
child
waiting
waiting
to
to
learn.
learn. Sometimes the distance between those two things is not geography. It is a decision. It is a responsibility. It is whether we choose to see waste or possibility. Circular thinking asks a simple but powerful question. Before we throw something away, who else could it still serve? And perhaps that question applies to more than laptops. It applies to systems, to opportunity, to the way we imagine justice. Because giving every child a fair start does not always begin with building something new. Sometimes it begins by putting something valuable back into use. If your business has unused laptops, IT equipment, or digital resources sitting idle, this is your reminder. They are not just old devices. They are potential classrooms, potential careers, potential futures. Breadline Africa believes every child deserves access to education that prepares them for the world they are growing into. And partnerships like these remind us that real change often begins with practical action. Start the conversation. Ask the question. Open the storeroom, because the child who needs that device may be closer than you think. This has been Our Voice, Our Future, powered by Breadline Africa. Until next time, let's keep building futures that leave no child behind.